This is the Footbrawl Podcast with your hosts, Tyler, Andy, and Boyer.
PS. Oh, shit.
Gotcha.
Welcome back to Mantasy Footbrawl Podcast, presented by
Yes.
your performance-enhancing dads. What's happening, fellas?
How much are you, Ty?
Oh,
How you feeling?
I'm all right. Having a week.
Yeah. How's marathon training going? Have you ran a marathon yet?
Slow and steady. That's all I got.
Attaboy.
I just imagine that right before you're going to eat a bunch of those boiled eggs, like that one guy in the Replacements.
Nigel. No, the big guy.
That was a big guy, right?
The sumo guy. I
sumo
can't remember
guy.
his name. Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure that'll get me right where I need to be. I'll throw up on the field
bathroom.
like he did. All right. Well, let's kick this thing off with some injuries from over the weekend. Elijah Mitchell, MCL sprain. He's gonna be out for a while. Wan'Dale Robinson, knee injury day to day. Keenan Allen out with a hammy for at least this week, would be my guess because it's a short turnaround. Could be a couple weeks. T. Higgins out with a concussion. Hopefully he'll be back this week. Najee Harris with a lower body extremity injury of some sort. I believe not major. I don't know. All these reports are a little different. So that's what we're going with. We're going to talk a little defense with TJ Watt. He tore his boobie. Shoot. You can't just put anything on the teleprompter. He's going to read it.
Can't play football with only one booby.
And then Dak is out with his hand injury. He had surgery. So we'll see how bad all of that plays out with Dallas coming forward.
It can't be much worse than it was this week.
You're not wrong. All right. So, Andy, you want to run us through last week's predictions?
Yeah, maybe you guys maybe the viewers want to find a new podcast because we're not doing so hot to start the year. Well, let's start with a good. Boyer hit on 3 of his picks. He picked Robbie to beat me. He picked Duo to beat Walker. He picked Fryer to beat Boyer. So props to Boyer for being the only one to pick himself to lose. So 3 for 3, or 3 and 3 for Boyer. Ty and I only got 1 out of the 6, so not good starts. Ty picked a Duo to beat Walker. I was the only one that picked Chris to beat Colin. So no bueno at all.
If you guys are playing along at home, you better be better than us.
Can't be much worse.
Well, I'm gonna start with my matchup versus Paul real quick from this week. I'm not happy about it. That whole 1.28 points that he beat me by. I know he had Mitchell go out in the first quarter, which hurt him. I had Higgins go out with the concussion, and it Komet not touch a ball. That was nice. But really, I feel like I started my best lineup. Michael Thomas put up 17. Had I played him, I could have won. Christian Kirk put up 11. Had I played him over T. Higgins, I could have won, but I'm not doing that. And then Buffalo's defense was 17 points against the Rams over New Orleans at 6. But who thought Buffalo was just going to blow the Rams out like that? So, it is what it is. I thought I had my best lineup in. I thought I had a shot. I even started Bateman over Singletary, like you guys told me to play Singletary, but still couldn't get the win. Put up 100 points. Paul, good work, man. Paul had his best lineup in by far as well. Khalil Herbert got in the end zone, but you're not starting him over David Montgomery. So.
Yep. I was embarrassed watching the Broncos game last night, having to cheer for both their defense and Javonte. Javonte had a fine game minus the goal line fumble, but watching the Broncos defense and the offense with all the penalties and the crowd noise getting to them and everything was just embarrassing. They seemed so unprepared and undisciplined. You know, it was a tough game to watch and have to cheer for the Broncos. So that was a bummer.
I don't know if their head coach can hack it.
See what you did there.
He's been waiting for that one.
He probably read it on the internet this morning. I want to touch real quick on the matchup that I said would be the matchup of the week, which is Boyer and Fryer. Fryer held up his end of the bargain, currently first place in the league with the most points, but Boyer did not. And it's surprising to me. You know, Herbert had a fine game. You know, they moved the ball pretty well against the Raiders, but Mike Williams only had 10 receiving yards. That was surprising. And then both of Boyer's running backs had surprising outputs. The Packers offense as a whole couldn't do anything against the Vikings, so that obviously hurt Aaron Jones. And then ETN against the Washington Commandos. Who knew that James Robinson is a freaking superhero coming back from a torn Achilles to take half of the carries and do a lot with them. So that does not bode well for ETN moving forward. Maybe he gets more looks. Maybe James Robinson doesn't hold up over the course of the season, but seeing him come back in and get a lot of work and do well with it, especially after we just saw Cam Akers suck a fat one on Thursday night. Props to you, man. I am very impressed by James Robinson, but it hurt Boyer. So Boyer's team shit the bed, and I was very surprised by that. Also, apologies for the Panthers pick. I said you got to pivot to the Panthers or the Dolphins, and the Dolphins were good. The Panthers weren't. So, you know.
It wouldn't have mattered, so I'm not going to hold you to it.
Hey, since Andrew's talking about Cam Akers sucking real bad, can we jump to the Cam Akers team still beating Jeremy?
Yeah, let's talk about how bad Jeremy's team is.
So I did not realize that when he was beating on the Miles Sanders drum, that he didn't start Miles Sanders.
He was really beating on a Chase Edmonds drum. He likes Miles Sanders, but Edmonds was the guy.
Like in game, he was very excited that Miles Sanders was doing really well.
Right.
He didn't start him, so
I think what Jeremy was taking an issue with was there was a lot of chirping, and I was a big part of that during the draft about the Miles Sanders pick, and the fact that he didn't score any touchdowns last year. And then I think we also kind of wrote Miles Sanders off as clearly his fourth best option for last week, and didn't give any credibility to the idea that he should be started. So I think Jeremy was taking a victory lap because Miles Sanders did get a touchdown, and we were all very, very, very wrong about the talent level of Miles Sanders, because he did get that one touchdown. So, you know, Jeremy left him on his bench. If he had played him over Chase Edmonds, he still would have lost. So, I mean, you can have Miles Sanders, Jeremy. He's clearly a top 5 running back, and your team clearly still sucks with him on your bench or in your starting lineup. So,
and here's the problem. Boston Scott also scored, and Gainwell also scored.
Everybody scored in that game.
Yeah.
So the hard part is Miles Sanders even going to get goal line work? Is he going to be the red zone guy, or is it going to be these other two that jump in?
I mean, do we think the Eagles will score 38 points a game? I mean, they don't play the Lions every week, so I'm not sure.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think and no part of me thought that Miles Sanders was going to get 0 touchdowns again, but the fact that he got 0 touchdowns last year, and the fact that there were 4 rushing touchdowns in this game this week, and they went to 4 different guys, and the other 3 guys were guys who had more rushing touchdowns than Miles Sanders last year, doesn't bode well. I think he gets 4 maybe this year. You know, he's not going to be a 10 touchdown guy, so he's going to have to do it yardage wise, and he had 100 yards this week. So good for you, Jay. I hope he keeps getting you 100 yards a week because that's where it's going to have to come from.
Now, to get off of Miles Sanders, I will give Andy some props. He said to start Cousins, and if he did, Jeremy is able to squeak this one through. I believe I'm doing my math right.
To be fair, I said I would start Dak, but I did call out that against Charlie, going with the stack could potentially up your risk of ruin if the Cowboys had a bad game. But I did say I preferred Dak to Cousins, so I won't take full credit for that. But I did call out that if the Cowboys shit the bed, that could be the window that let Charlie back in, and it clearly was, because Dak and CD did nothing and really hurt Jay this week.
Well, and for Charlie, Gabe Davis having that touchdown and 88 yards, you guys were saying that's the big upside. It got him where he needed to go. AJ Dillon had a good week. Kelsey had a good week, like we expect. His kicker putting up 13.3 though pulled Charlie through as well, which is weird to say.
I don't know if
it balanced down to his defense getting him 2 points. I mean, you get 15 points between your kicker and defense. Usually it's 7 and 8, but if it's 13 and 3 or 12 and 2 or 12 and 3 or whatever, I mean, it's about what you expect.
Or the 13.3 could have been Cam Akers and kicker could have been nothing.
Yeah. Or you could get 26 points out of your defense and no points out of your starting wide receivers, kicker, and tight end and still beat me.
I do think that Charlie has some hope here, because I don't expect Lance to get 9 points and playing him on soon every week. So, even if some of his guys are a little up and down, or some of these guys kind of regress back or whatever, having his quarterback only score 9 points and he still puts up a respectable 86 still feels like he might be able to field a competitive enough team to where he doesn't sell after week 6 and he ends up getting the 4 wins that I predicted that he gets. So
yeah, I kind of see Trey Lance being like a Jalen Hurts from last year type of quarterback, where he's got fantasy value and what he does with his legs is worth keeping him in your starting lineup. He put 54 yards on the ground when he was swimming for those yards. So good for you. But I also think that there's going to be murmurings, especially as long as Garoppolo's on the roster, about if he's making mistakes, if he's not winning games and the rest of the team around him is good, it's going to be just like Jalen Hurts last year, where it's like, man, this guy's just not a real life quarterback that people are comfortable with. And if they let it ride it out and it works out, it'll be fine fantasy wise. But he's one of those guys that if he's not quite figuring it out, and he did not look good in the decision making department on Sunday. I know weather was a factor, but there were other issues at play besides just the wet field. Then you run that risk of losing your starting quarterback just because of a coaching decision.
Ty is a 49ers fan. If 49ers lose to the Seahawks next week and Lance doesn't play well, are you going to be calling for Jimmy?
No.
Lance is your guy?
You guys went to the playoffs last year with Jimmy. If you guys shit the bed in the first 2 weeks against bad teams, Seahawks are a bad team and the Bears are a worse team. If you guys shit the bed week 1 and week 2 when you went to the playoffs last year with Jimmy, you don't want to see a change?
The problem is, I'd hate to be honest with you, at this point, we're saying Lance is a guy. Garoppolo is not going to be the long-term answer. If this year ends up out the window, it's going to suck. But you got to find out what you got with Lance, because if he's not the answer, you got to find a new one. Yeah. Because Jimmy G could be another year or 2 solution, but he's not going to be a long-term answer.
Do you think Shanahan is hoping like Nagy did, where he's hoping that Dalton just got hurt? He's hoping that Lance gets hurt so he can put in Jimmy.
Maybe, but I don't know. You sold so much to go get Lance. You got to give him a shot, and a fair shot, to get a handful of games under his belt to figure it out before you just uproot him from the starting job and see what happens.
That first drive looked real good until Debo fumbled, but
to be honest, he made some good decisions early on. That second half just turned to crap. Because the first half, I was happy with his scrambles. I was happy with what he was doing. he had a couple good throws deep down the sideline, even in the wet game. It just everything went downhill when Mitchell went out and they stopped running the ball.
That's fair.
I think it was partially bad play calling come the second half, but we won't talk about it. I am going to jump to Andy and Robbie's game real quick. The one thing we had kind of said about Robbie's team would be Allen Robinson, Darnell Mooney. Look, I mean, Robbie still beat Andy with that 26-point Pittsburgh defense, 27-point Saquon Barkley. Those two definitely carried him, but we had kind of said that his running backs were good. Najee Harris, Saquon Barkley, Leonard Fournette. But Allen Robinson and Darnell Mooney could have been his downfall, and they should have been, but he got enough from other places to pull out a win. Javonte Williams fumbling the ball in the goal line instead of scoring a touchdown makes a big difference.
Yeah, not fun.
But, I mean, you're not starting Michael Carter. He had a good game at 10. But it's a good sign for Andy that Michael Carter has a chance, so at least he's got another guy that's a viable option if he needs it, at least for the first handful of weeks. But I think both of them had their best lineups in, and I mean, fantasy football plays out this way.
It'll happen.
So,
do we want to touch on the trade that still hasn't gone through officially, but was announced last night?
I'd love to.
All right, so sounds like Charlie is sending Chris Olave to Colin, and in return, he's getting Ramondre Stevenson. Now, I know Colin was not feeling great about his wide receiver situation with Waddle and Smith and Sky Moore and Treylon Burks, so why not add another rookie wide receiver to the mix and hope that fixes it? Especially when last week he started Ramondre Stevenson. So, what do you guys think of this decision making?
So Colin's team is Jonathan Taylor, Josh Jacobs, and James Cook for running back, where he already had Waddle and Smith and Sky Moore and Treylon Burks.
Yeah, he had upside rookies on the bench. Maybe not quite as good as Olave, but Burks to Olave, 6 of one, half dozen of the other.
Right. And Ramondre, even if he's splitting carries with Damian Harris, still has allows for the adjustment with Jonathan Taylor and Jacobs and that type of stuff during bye weeks or injuries or whatever may happen, where James Cook will find a role at some point, I'm sure. But with Zach Moss touching the ball after, more or less garbage time, Singletary starting the game, and James Cook going for negative 1.8, that I don't know. It was weird to me that Colin would move his third running back that I think has upside, that I think could be a solid play for a good portion of the year, for another upside wide receiver, like you said. So,
yep, I don't see what Colin gains out of this aside from another rookie lottery ticket that maybe he's got a little bit more potential to hit, but still not a guy that he had 3 targets last week, so who cares?
And Jarvis Landry had like 11.
Yeah. And Michael Thomas, I think, only had 5 catches, but he had both touchdowns. So, it is what it is. Ramondre Stevenson touched the ball 10 times. He only got 27 yards out of it, but it was not a productive day, but the Dolphins have a good defense, and he's getting touches in that offense. Charlie needed a running back after Akers looked like crap. Isaiah Pacheco, I think he had 12 points. He had 60 yards and a touchdown, but I think most of that came in garbage time once the game was out of reach. I did not watch that game.
Yeah, it was already like 33 or 37-7 or something like that.
Yeah, so great to see some burst out of the rookie there, but I don't think you can rely on him getting double-digit touches every week as it stands right now. So, good move for Charlie.
Yeah, so it has officially gone through, and Charlie has Stevenson as his running back 2 over Akers right now.
Yeah,
We'll
I
talk
mean,
about that.
I support that. I haven't looked at matchups or anything for this week, but seeing what we saw last week, Cam Akers
Something you
did
gotta
not look
do.
ready to go.
Yeah, Charlie needed a running back that he could play over Akers, and he got him, to me pretty cheap.
Mhm.
Yeah. So all right. Well, we'll skip forward to we'll move up to the next week's matchups, do some predictions here, some lineup decisions. If we didn't hit your game from last week, if you really want our opinion, let us know. We're not good at this anyway, so you probably don't want our opinion. You know if you won, you know if you lost. Here we go. We're gonna move forward. But before we do that, pow! Boyer, what are you drinking?
I'm drinking Sam Adams Porch Rocker.
Oh, nice beer. It's a good one.
I've not had that one. Is it good?
It is. It's a lemon radler, whatever that means. It's part of their summer pack. I got it on clearance because that stuff is being phased out. It's getting cooler.
Yeah,
Pretty
we
good.
have switched to full fall mode in our
Mhm.
house. I've been making soups and chilies and all sorts.
That's a bummer when it gets back to 80 here in the next few days.
Yeah, no, but I'm drinking water. Still trying to watch my growing girlish figure.
Girlish figure. Yep.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
I had a water and it is gone. So
Oh wow, your
currently-
girlish figure is just torched. Then you gotta get slower on that.
that's right. So that's why I asked Boyer what he was drinking, because I knew this is where we were going.
Hey, if you're drinking at church, is it holy water?
See, you get it. So all right, well, let's jump forward on bad jokes into week 2. Quote unquote rivalry week. That's what it says on my screen. I don't know. I get Jeremy, so apparently
This is the bonus week, the old division rivalry that we added for the 15th week.
right.
Yeah, I like that.
That's why it's quote unquote a rivalry week. But we'll start up at the top here with my top, because your guys' tops probably look different, but with me versus Jeremy. Boyer or Andy, want to take this game?
Yeah, I can. So Ty and Jeremy are two teams headed in different directions after last week. Jeremy looking to redeem himself after a pretty bad showing. Ty looking to get closer to his potential, but still put up 100 points last week. So looking here, Ty's got some lineup decisions. Bateman against Miami in the flex, or Singletary Monday night against Tennessee, or Michael Thomas against Tampa. I don't know that that's the direction that I go after seeing what they did to the Cowboys, but maybe. Michael Thomas had 2 touchdowns last week. So Christian Kirk I'd consider as well. I don't think I'm throwing Ayuk out there, but Ty's a Niner fan, so maybe he wants to keep him in consideration too. Looking at these options, I'm going Christian Kirk. I love the fact that he had 12 targets and 117 yards last week in a game where they're probably going to have to throw against Indy. Love it. I will go Christian Kirk and be very confident in that decision. I'm also putting Buffalo's defense in there. I'm sure Ty just hasn't made that switch yet, but Buffalo's defense is going to be in there over the Saints. The other thing for Ty's team would be putting a waiver in for another tight end. Cole Kmet had 1 target, no catches. I know it was a weather game. I know we like the upside of Cole Kmet. I know the Bears don't have very many guys to throw to, but 1 target is not going to get it done for fantasy. So maybe some consideration there to hit the waiver wire for a tight end.
Darnell Mooney only had 1 or 2 targets too.
Hey, we didn't like him either. All right. Do we want to hit Jeremy's side and do both of the decisions together? Or do you guys want to talk about Ty's decision first?
I think
Go ahead.
we'll talk Ty's decision first while it's fresh.
That works.
Yeah, so I like Kirk. I think could be a consistent play there just to get a solid 80 yards. He's got a little bit of a touch matchup against Indianapolis, but Brandon Cooks was fine, so Kirk should be just about as good. But I think I'd play Singletary in the flex. I don't think Ty needs a ton of points. Singletary, I think, is going to give him like a very solid baseline. Maybe punch it in for a touchdown. I like Singletary there, but I think the Kirk play would be just fine too.
Well, and part of
I
it
think it's between those two players.
Part of my decision could be made with T. Higgins' concussion situation on how I got to move people around as well.
That's a good point. I forgot about that.
I mean, even then, if I move Bateman or Kirk to the Higgins spot, I still got to figure out that flex between Kirk and Singletary or whatever as well, because I'm deep enough to make all these decisions for now.
Right.
So I've not looked at matchups close enough to make that decision. I would probably play Christian Kirk against Indy over Michael Thomas. The 1 week thing, I'm still going to wait and see kind of how he is, what that situation plays out as. Plus against Tampa Bay, that's rough. So it will probably be Christian Kirk and Singletary that, well, depending upon what happens, but it'll be between the two of them. We'll kind of see where things are at later in the week.
Yeah, that's fair. On Jeremy's side, I think we're looking at start 2 out of 3 running backs between CEH, Chase Edmonds, and league MVP Miles Sanders. Minnesota shut down the Packers top to bottom. It will be interesting to see how the Eagles do on Monday night against them, both passing and running, since their offense is a little bit more versatile with a little bit more firepower at wide receiver and leg power at quarterback, if that makes a big difference. So I'm guessing that Jeremy's going to want to chase last week a bit with Miles Sanders scoring his lone touchdown of the season and get him into his lineup over Chase Edmonds. Can't say I fault him for that, but what do you guys think?
I would also put Sanders in just because Baltimore's defense isn't necessarily a cakewalk either. And I think there's more of an opportunity for Sanders. I mean, Edmonds had 12 attempts and Sanders had 13. But there's a lot of people in Miami. I mean, there are a lot in Philadelphia as well, but I think Miles Sanders is pretty solidified as the main running back. He may not get the goal line touches, but I don't know what that's going to look like for Edmonds either. So I think Philadelphia's offense showed enough last week that I would probably chase the upside of Miles Sanders over the upside of Chase Edmonds at this point. Just because I don't know what Chase Edmonds is going to be, but I know Jeremy likes him. I'm keeping CEH in.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Edmonds rushed 12 times for 25 yards. And I know New England normally has a pretty good team defense, but Baltimore is going to be tougher to run against too. So I don't trust that. I would go with Miles Sanders purely because he at least did something last week. Although it was against the Lions, they clearly wanted to get him involved. And Miles Sanders has always had some sort of burst, to him where he does have the ability to break off a good chunk play or a good run. Problem is they've spread it out so much in the last couple of years. Sanders has dealt with some injuries and stuff. So I'm okay with Sanders here because I think that he has the bigger, big play potential. And Edmonds, I think, could keep plodding along. He's just not a between the tackles guy on a consistent basis. They really don't have that otherwise. So they've got to just keep pounding him into the middle and hope that he squeaks out somewhere for a yard or two.
Yeah. So I'm going to break down Miles Sanders real quick because Jeremy didn't like that I've been shitting on him. But what Miles Sanders is he is not a goal line back and he is not a high volume back, but he is a very efficient runner. He's 5.5 yards a carry, which is great. Problem is that he maxes out at about 15 carries in a game. So you're looking at 75 to 90 yards and probably no touchdowns in most weeks, which is serviceable, but not great, right? Chase Edmonds is worse than that in pretty much all aspects. He's not a goal line back. He catches the ball maybe a little bit more than Miles Sanders does, but he's also not a 5.5 yards a carry guy. He's not a 20 carries a week guy. So I like Miles Sanders better than Chase Edmonds week to week, regardless of matchups, because he's going to get you a decent amount with the limited number of carries that he gets. It's just unfortunate that his upside is capped by the fact that he's not going to score very often and he's not going to get the ball a ton because he's not that type of back that unless he busts a 50-yard touchdown or whatever, it's going to be hard for him to crack more than 10, 11 points in most weeks, right?
Yeah, so I had Miles Sanders a couple years ago, and you hit the nail on the head. He was capable of hitting 14 points in a game, and when he did it, it felt great. But most of the time, he was getting about 5, and it was really frustrating. And that didn't count the injuries, the soft tissue injuries, the hamstrings, those type of things that he tends to suffer, kind of like an Elijah Mitchell does. So I think that's why he doesn't get a ton of the carries, is because of that. And although he's efficient with them, he just won't get them. And the Eagles have kind of moved to this committee to make sure is that maybe he stays fresh, so he stays healthy all year. But if he's only getting 5 points most weeks, and then every so often he goes and gets 14 or 15, but that's what he maxes out at once every 5 or 6 weeks. It's hard to time those, and it's frustrating. But I think he is the better play than Edmonds, because I'm just not sure Edmonds is going to have it almost at all this year unless the Dolphins can score like way more touchdowns. I don't know if the Ravens is the team that they do that against.
Yep, all fair.
All right, so who's winning this matchup?
I got Ty.
Yeah, I got Ty. I have to expect Eckler and McCaffrey actually do what Eckler and McCaffrey would normally do.
You mean get hurt?
Whoa! Come on,
Eckler
man.
doesn't. Eckler's
Sorry,
been relatively
I
healthy.
couldn't pass that up.
But yeah, McCaffrey might.
Jeremy's got a guy out suspended and on the NFL reserve list here. All right.
Sounds like some waivers.
I don't have that yet. Let's not do this. All right, I'm taking myself as well. Let's
Right.
Try not to let us down this time, Ty.
Yeah, please.
listen, I'll try my best. Let's jump to the duo versus Fryer.
Want that one, Ty?
Yeah, I'll take it. Why not? So looking down the duo, they've got Jahan Dotson at their wide receiver 2 spot right now. Corduroy Patterson at their flex. Outside of that, they've got Robert Woods. They've got possibly Keenan Allen, but like we talked about earlier, I'm not sure he's going to play this week. So you got Kadarius Toney, you got Garrett Wilson, Robert Woods. Woods only had 2 targets, 1 catch this week. Garrett Wilson had 4 receptions for 52 yards, and Toney really didn't do much either. So is Dotson the best play here? Would you pivot to a Toney, a Wilson, a Robert Woods on the duo side?
Man, so I saw Dotson in the starting lineup when we started breaking this down, and I pulled it up, and I was like, man, they're really chasing last week, right? Dotson had 2 touchdowns, and you're not going to get 2 touchdowns this week. Then we just had to look at their sad sack of bench over here, and there's just not much to work with. You nailed it, Ty. Toney didn't do much. Wilson had 8 targets against Baltimore, so maybe. And Robert Woods had a crap game, 1 catch for 13 yards. So it's not like you can say he's a better play than Dotson this week. So, yeah, this is bad.
And Dotson at least, they're playing Detroit, so there's a possibility there, because that game was high scoring last week.
Yeah.
I mean, Wilson's got Cleveland. Their defense is supposed to be good. And then
Honestly,
Robert Woods plays against Buffalo.
If this is my team, I'm finding somebody that I can throw $1 or $2 next year on somebody's bench and just snag a guy hell, I mean, not that he's up for sale, but like go get Olave, and that feels better than any of the other guys.
I mean, Jarvis Landry is on someone's bench.
Right.
I
I
mean,
mean, a
he's
guy like
not going to
Chase
be.
Claypool, or
He's not a high upside guy. He's not going to do a ton. He's a guy that you could say, here's a couple bucks. Give me I just need someone to start and give me some targets.
How about Julio Jones and Elijah Moore on the team right on the other side? Because he's already got Mike Evans, Devontae Adams, Marquise Brown, and Jerry Jeudy.
Yeah, not
I mean,
sure if Fryer's going to help the team out that he's
Right.
facing this week, but yeah,
That'd be
there's
a
a
very
bunch of
Fryer
bench
move.
wide receivers. I mean, I've got a handful that they
Right.
could come talk to me about. I don't want to play Dotson this week. I think that of what they have, it's a reasonable play, but you got to figure something better out than that.
I mean, out of the guys that they play, I would probably play Garrett Wilson and chase the targets over the touchdowns. I kind of get why they want to do it, but he had like, I don't know, 4 or 5 targets, 3 catches, and 2 touchdowns, and he didn't. I can't. You just can't expect that to happen again, especially McLaurin on the team, Curtis Samuel on the team, Antonio Gibson, McKissick.
The only
I'm gonna go with
hold
Garrett
on.
Wilson, who had
So the only benefit to Dotson, out of his 3 receptions, 2 of the 3 of them, I think 3 of his 5 targets were end zone targets. So they're out of 5 looks, 3 of them being in the end zone is good.
I mean,
2 of them being caught for
the
touchdowns
Jaguars
is
just
great.
kept losing him because they were focused on all the other guys. I just don't expect Detroit to be even quite that inept, personally.
Well, I'm just saying, at least he got targeted 3 times in the end zone, which does make for at least a possibility of a touchdown a week. So if you're going for that, there's an upside for the possibility.
Right. I mean, that's a big boom bust play. I mean, you risk him getting 0 points and maybe getting a touchdown for 6 or 8 or whatever after he gets some yards, where I would go after the targets of Garrett Wilson and expect, I mean, he's a talented guy. He gets those targets. He should get some yards. He should at some point get a touchdown, potentially, maybe at some point if the Jets can get there. So
yeah.
Out of the guys he has, I'm going Garrett Wilson, but I'm with Andy. He's probably got to trade at something.
All right, I'm playing Dotson. You guys play Wilson.
I'm going Dotson too. Of what
Okay.
they have, if that's what they're rolling with as a roster this week, I'm starting Dotson.
All right, so then he should probably get Mr. Reed out of Kansas City as a backup kicker just in case Butker can't play this week. Dude's kicking him out the back of the end zone.
Love it.
Hitting field goals, So just in case you need an extra
story.
kicker, if we got an extra kicker, we got this covered. So let's shoot over to Fryer's team. This is going to be an interesting. James Conner and Kareem Hunt both played well last week, although Arizona was garbage. Kareem Hunt played really, really well. So at least he's showing that he can. You didn't like him?
I mean, Kareem Hunt had 2 touchdowns and 60 yards besides that.
11 for 46 on the ground.
Yeah, which isn't bad. I mean,
11 on the ground is a little shocking, to be honest. 11 touches on the ground.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying he had a bad game. He had 19 fantasy points, but it was driven by 2 touchdowns.
Well, and they get the Jets this week, which, I mean, their defense is getting better, but
Hunt was used in the slot, out wide, and even as a fullback. Like that, they're clearly trying to get him involved.
Yeah, which is, I mean, I'm not saying it's a bad play.
Right.
I'm not saying that he had a fantastic game either, because, he turned 15 touches into 70 yards, which is fine.
Right. All right. So then are you starting James Robinson against Indy then over Kareem Hunt?
Not over Hunt, maybe in the flex.
Over James Conner?
No, in the flex.
I was just asking about both running backs.
No, Connor's for sure in your lineup.
Okay. So all right, then Evans and Adams are both playing. So your flex, Hollywood Brown, Jerry Jeudy, James Robinson. You could say Julio, but I'm not starting Julio over the other ones.
Yeah. I mean, Fryer's got a lot of guys. I'm playing Jeudy in the flex, but the fact that he's got Harris, Robinson, Elijah Moore, Julio Jones, all is just if bye week guys at this point is great for him. So
Yeah.
I'm rolling with Kareem Hunt. I'm not saying he's a bad play. I'm just saying his points came from touchdowns last week, and if I know the Browns, I don't know that they're going to be scoring a ton of touchdowns week to week, given their current quarterback situation. So I'm not banking on that. He's going to have to do more if he doesn't get those touchdowns.
And Judy had one long reception that was broken down for a touchdown.
Yeah,
and you take that 67-yard touchdown away, and he really didn't have crap either.
that's fair. I like the fact that that Pittman kind of tore up Houston last week. That might be more of a Sutton job than Judy, but I mean Judy got 7 looks. He had 102 yards, so I think it breaks down to like 6 for 40, 6 targets, 3 catches for 40 yards. Besides the long touchdown, so there's enough volume there for me to be happy with it. I could see going Hollywood, but I would lean toward Judy.
I would lean there as well, because I just don't know what Harris is going to look like or Robinson's going to look like week to week. If Etienne gets more touches, if Stevenson gets more touches, I think I'm taking one of these wide receivers and hoping for the best.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with Judy on this one. Robinson, I like, especially in this matchup where Fry is the favorite, but against Indianapolis, they've got a tough defense. So I can't really say that I would do Robinson, particularly in this week, but I think he'll probably be a solid flex play for him going forward. But Judy, I think this week is definitely the play against Houston for sure. I think he continues getting potentially big plays even against a bad defense. So
all right. So who's going to win?
Fryer.
Tell you who you got.
I'm also going to take Fryer just because I'm concerned about the Hunter Henry. Who the heck knows what Corduroy Patterson's going to do against the Rams, and then Jahan Dotson. I just think there's too many questions on the duo side right now.
Derrick Henry has Buffalo, which isn't a great matchup for him either.
Yeah, I will say I'm not super jazzed about the duos matchups, but I am going to pick them because I like Jalen Hurts against Minnesota. I like what I think he's going to be able to do with his legs and what their offense looked like last week. I'm invested in that now. I think that's a real thing. On the other side, Lamar Jackson I think he rushed 6 times, which isn't a bad thing, but I think he had 17 yards. And I'm beginning to wonder after just 1 week if that guy is not worried about getting hurt, not having a contract this year. And there's a big difference fantasy wise between 900 rushing yards, Lamar Jackson, and I don't want to get hurt so I can get a contract next year rushing yards, Lamar Jackson, because he doesn't have Hollywood anymore. They don't throw the ball that great in the first place. So he's got to get it for you with his legs. And if he's running scared, running out of bounds, not running as often, whatever it is, that's not good. So maybe I'm imagining it, maybe not. It's something to keep an eye on, something that I'm curious about and starting to worry about. So I'm gonna give Duo the edge here because I do think that there's a 15-point gap in their quarterbacks this week.
I knew you were going Duo once you asked me who I was going with. I knew you wanted to be different.
I wanted to be last.
All right, so let's jump to Walker versus Chris. And since Boyer disappeared, Andy,
Were you there?
Andy, just jump into this one if you don't mind.
Oh no. Yeah. Okay. Walker versus Chris should be hopefully a good matchup. Looking at Walker's team, he's got Pollard and Cooper on his bench, and he's got Melvin Gordon in the flex against Houston. I think that's a good call. Houston's run defense is not good. Assuming that the Broncos get their heads out of their ass, they should be able to get Javonte and Melvin Gordon some good fantasy points. He's got Henderson in his starting lineup. Clearly, he was the number 1 guy last week. So I don't see any roster decisions on Walker's side. I think he's set there. If one of you guys wants to argue for a change, I'm all ears. But I think he's set.
Yeah, my only consideration would be Rodgers against Chicago over Kyler Murray against Las Vegas, possibly. Just Kyler Murray, I don't like the weapons he has right now. And if Rondale Moore's still out and all he has is Ertz and Hollywood Brown, granted, Rodgers doesn't have much either. But
I was gonna say Rodgers looked like shit last week, and he doesn't have weapons either. So he owns the Bears. I will give you that, and I could see the argument for getting him in here, but I don't think I make the switch. I like that Kyler Murray's got some legs to him, and I mean Hollywood's better than anything that Rodgers is throwing to right now.
Right. Well, and is the Vikings defense better than the Chiefs defense? Because the Chiefs tore apart Arizona. Arizona couldn't do anything last week. I don't know. Both quarterbacks had Kyler Murray had a rough week last week and still put up 20 fantasy points.
Right.
So, I mean, you have to go that way, I think, but I just wanted to see what your thoughts were on Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, I get the point, and especially against the Bears, who he has spanked mercilessly over his entire Hall of Fame 20-year career, just like Brett Favre did over his entire 20-year Hall of Fame career, because the Packers have had two good players in the last 40 years, and we never have to stop hearing about it. I get it, and you're probably right. And Rodgers is probably going to go off for 350 and 4 touchdowns, and we're going to tuck our tails and have our one win against the Niners, and that's all we get this year. But after how bad Rodgers looked last week, I don't see a reason to bench Kyler for him.
The one thing I'll say about because I watched Rodgers play against Minnesota, and I don't want to say he's lost a step because he'll run for 100 yards randomly against the Bears this week. But he definitely he doesn't have the mobility that he had before to get him out of some of the spaces. Not to say he can't throw on the run still, but he's not exactly looking to, take off, in the middle of these defenses and stuff. And that's where Kyler Murray's floor, I think, is where I'm going to stay with. Because even if the Raiders have a better defense, Murray's still going to have that floor with the rushing.
Yep.
All right. Andy, go ahead over to Chris.
Yeah, on Chris's side, I also am not really seeing any glaring decisions. I think Deontay's probably his best flex option, even against the Patriots. Dobbins isn't healthy yet. Ingram's a nobody. Madison's a handcuff. I'm not playing Pickens or Gallup. Jamal Williams, maybe. But I feel like that's getting cute. I mean, he had 2 touchdowns, but beyond that, he had 11 carries for 28 yards last week. So
he's just going to vulture touchdowns, and you never know when it's going to happen.
Yeah. I mean, that's fine if that's what you need, but I think you stick with volume, you stick with higher floors in Deontay, and the rest of Chris's team looks solid here. So I don't really see any tough lineup decisions on either side.
Yeah, I love Jamal Williams. I think he's one of the most fun guys in the league. Check out some of his clips and interviews and stuff, and he's hilarious. But I'm not going to bank on him getting 2 touchdowns every week. And he has not been efficient as a runner for probably the last 2 or 3 years. So I'm not going to trust him. He's got just a rock bottom floor if he doesn't get those touchdowns. So I think Chris stands pat.
Yep.
All right. So who's going to win this one?
I will go ahead and say Chris on the back of a Dalvin Cook enormous Monday night game against the Eagles.
Boyer?
Oh, man, this one's a little tough. I actually think Walker's going to get it because I like a few of his matchups here. I think Murray will be fine. Jefferson against Philly, if that's a shootout, that'll be fun. A.J. Brown should at least still get his own. Henderson against Atlanta could be good. Melvin Gordon against Houston in garbage time if he ends up taking a lot of, like fourth quarter carries away from Javonte. I'm going to go with Walker. I think that overall, some of those matchups I think might help him out.
All right, Ty, break the tie for us.
I'm going with Chris as well, and most of mine is banking on. I don't know about Kyler Murray. I talked about that a little bit, but I think Matt Stafford is going to have a hell of a game this week because after last week, 1 touchdown, 3 picks. I think they're just going to let him throw all game. It doesn't matter what the score is, and it could be a 35-point week from Matt Stafford, which could make a difference.
Fair. And if you're right in that, then Henderson's not getting as much on Walker's side too. So
right. So that's the way I'm leaning. So since the next one is Charlie versus Boyer, I will take this one, and Boyer, you can have the next one. So Charlie's side, I think he's set. Do you play? I think he's got Cincinnati versus at Dallas in right now. He's got Tampa Bay versus New Orleans on the bench for defenses. Other than that, we all kind of said that Stevenson over Akers is a good play this week, just until you know what Akers is. So I guess, are you changing a defense, or are you just letting Cincinnati ride against this bad Dallas team?
yeah, I am not tempted to do that. I know Dallas is not a great team right now. Their offensive line's banged up, and obviously Dak going down's a big deal. But since his defense is not a productive fantasy defense, so if I can, I'm probably going to the waiver wire to pick up maybe the Packers defense if they're out there. I don't know, but I'm at least exploring the waiver options, or just roll with Tampa against Jameis Winston, because he turns the ball over, although a lot less recently than earlier in his career. But I don't think I can play the Bengals this week.
I got cute and sat Buffalo last week, and it bit me. I'm gonna just play the better defense here and take Tampa Bay as well.
I see. I'm okay with him playing Cincy. I think you want turnovers, and I think Cincy is prime for getting those turnovers with the backup quarterback coming in. Cooper Rush did not look good coming in towards the end of that game against Tampa. He missed a lot of throws. If they can get a little bit of pressure on him, I think that's where they could get some plays in. So I'm fine with Cincinnati here. I don't necessarily feel like I need to play Tampa against a New Orleans offense that did put up some points last week.
Yeah, against Atlanta.
I said granted against Atlanta. I was getting there.
So
I
don't know.
I'm chasing the turnovers and the sacks on the backup quarterback.
That's fair. All right, so then moving to Boyer's side, he's got ETN as the running back 2. He's got Breece Hall on the bench, which didn't do anything last week. Dameon Pierce had 11 carries last week, didn't do a whole lot. What are you doing with this running back situation?
Yeah, if I'm Boyer, I'm keeping Aaron Jones in. I'm keeping ETN in, and then coming down to look at the flex, I probably don't want Brandon Cooks against the Denver cornerbacks. Surtain did a really nice job, despite a few penalties, at locking down DK Metcalf. And Brandon Cooks is no DK Metcalf. So I am going to make a switch at the flex. I'm probably putting in Breece Hall, not because I'm worried about Dameon Pierce's matchup, but because I'm worried about Dameon Pierce's snap split. I did all right. So everybody jerked off all over Dameon Pierce all off season long, and it got more and more ridiculous the closer we got to the start of the season. Everybody's like, Dameon Pierce is the guy to get. And then at the end of the day, the coaching staff was like, hey, Dameon Pierce is our RB1 and we're cutting Marlon Mack. And I was like, oh shit, like this was one of the times that all the hype was actually real. It was real, guys. It was real. They cut Marlon Mack. Dameon Pierce has to be their number 1. Then what do? They go out and give 3/4 of the snaps to fucking Rex Burkhead. in a game that they were winning the whole time.
Yeah, but
Didn't see that coming.
Dameon Pierce had 11 touches this week, and Breece Hall had 6 carries and 6 receptions this week.
I think that there is going to be a shift from Michael Carter to Breece Hall, and I think that there's more productivity out of the Jets running backs than the Houston running backs on the whole. So I'm going Breece Hall. I'm planting my flag, putting it on tape. We'll post it on the internet tomorrow. Breece Hall over Dameon Pierce this week.
I'm playing Tyler Boyd if T. Higgins is out.
Oh, interesting choice. Since he may not need to throw very much in that game.
No, but one long ball to Boyd could do it.
Fair. He's not a long ball catcher.
Okay, one touchdown could do it. It could beat out Breece Hall and Dameon Pierce.
Also true.
Because after what's his nuts Higgins went out. I mean, Boyd had 4 receptions for 33 yards and a touchdown in the second half. So I mean, you give him 66 yards and a touchdown next week, and he'll be fine.
Yep. Or who are you playing in your flex?
No idea. It's not a great position to be in. Essentially is that part of the reason it looks like for the big snap count difference because they trust Burke had to do all the other stuff, blocking and all that stuff. I mean, Dameon Pierce is still a rookie, so you can't expect him to be super great. That's why on like 28% snaps, he had 11 carries. So when he was in, they were giving him the ball.
Sure.
So the question is how often are they going to get him in? And do his carries just continue to rise every time that he's in? So, he has good practice. He can block, whatever. It ends up working out. I don't trust it at all until I can see it on the field. So I'm probably in some sort of Breece Hall, maybe, but I don't know. I like the Tyler Boyd. I think Tyler brings up a very good point with Tyler Boyd if Higgins is out. Because Tyler Boyd is a good player, and he has been for a while. It's just now he's behind Chase and Higgins. So fantasy-wise, he hasn't been super great. But if he gets the opportunities, he's been fine. So the answer is I don't know. No idea what I'm going to do. I am interested to hear what you guys should think about Knox versus Tunyon, though.
I think if Lazard doesn't play, I'm fine with putting Tunyon in there because the rookies are dropping shit, and Rodgers doesn't like throwing to rookies in the first place. So getting the ball to Tunyon is something that's going to make sense in a game where we're going to get embarrassed by a guy who's been embarrassing us for the last 20 years. He's going to have to throw to somebody. It can't just be Aaron Jones. So I'm fine with that switch if Lazard is out. If Lazard is in, I'd still be okay with it, but I think I would lean toward Dawson Knox. But that's a tough one.
I'm playing Knox just for the offense. I'm taking my shot on him over what we saw out of Green Bay last week, especially if we're not trusting Aaron Rodgers to be a starter. Granted, I know Kyler Murray is there and Kyler Murray's good, but if Rodgers, if we're nervous about him, how are you going to trust Tunyon? So I'm going to just go with the high-powered offense and hope for the best with Knox.
Tunyon lived and died by touchdowns a couple of years ago, and even if Lazard is there, Lazard being there might actually help because it'll at least get them down there. But we didn't really see him get targeted in the end zone against Minnesota. I have to imagine that changes since they were the Packers weren't very good in the red zone really for the last couple of years, but they really weren't good against Minnesota. So I'm hoping that's what the hope would be. Boy, if Tunyon can get a touchdown, then that's what I'm throwing him out there for. But I don't know how I feel about it because I like the stack of Knox and Josh Allen. So I don't like my decisions this week. I don't like the way my team is set up right now.
Hey, another vote against the stack when you're going against Charlie. So, something to consider.
That's fair.
All right, so who's going to win this matchup?
I am with Boyer on the fact that I don't really like his matchups this week, but I'm still going to pick him because Charlie's team is just not quite as good.
Yeah, I'm going to agree. Josh Allen, Tyreek Hill, Mike Williams, especially if Keenan Allen's out. That may be enough to get you through. Aaron Jones could carry it. I think you've got just enough to really that A.J. Dillon, Aaron Jones combo between the two of your teams could be a make or break for either of you. But I got Aaron Jones on that, so let's go Boyer.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with me on this one. I'm not real confident about my team, but it is a boom or bust team, and we could definitely see a boom here with some of these guys. So, and Josh Allen should give me enough of a floor to at least hopefully be more competitive than 76 points. So that's the goal to beat right now, 76 points.
All right, so let's jump to Colin versus Andy. Boyer, you gonna take that one for me?
Yeah. Colin versus Andy means, let's take a look. All right, looking at Colin's team with Waddle and Devonta. Right now his tight end spot is empty. Does he have a tight end on his roster?
He's
No,
got
it's his
Njoku in the
flex.
tight end.
He does have Njoku.
It's because he
He
traded
has
Stevenson.
He has Kittle. He has
Gotcha,
Kittle to
gotcha.
play as well, possibly at tight end.
Gotcha.
Flex is open.
All right, flex being open. Okay, I guess, are you playing Olave? You just got him. You almost have to play him, right?
Yeah.
James Cook, I wouldn't trust. Sky Moore, against the Chargers could be something. Burks against Buffalo, I wouldn't touch that. So it's got to be Olave or Moore, and I feel like Olave at least is. But Olave plays against Tampa. I really don't understand this trade.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see if Colin makes a move on waivers to add a guy. I don't even know who's out there that we're super jazzed about after week 1. But I'm with you. I don't know who I'm starting in the flex, but I feel like it's Olave because you just traded for him. But at the same time, if that's the plan, why not just hold on to Ramondre unless you're that worried about the Patriots offense? So probably Olave. Ty, what do you think? Who are you putting at the flex? Right?
To be honest with you, who are you putting at wide receiver 2? Are you keeping Devonta Smith there because you got nothing else? Because I'm
You
still
have
upset
to.
about.
Like,
I'm
he
still
has
upset
nobody
about
Well, then
else.
Olave's your wide receiver 2, and we're talking about
Right.
Devonta Smith or Treylon Burks at your flex, which is worse, right?
Right.
I
Yeah.
think, to be honest, even against Buffalo, I might play Burks and Olave over Devonta Smith. Devonta didn't do it last year, and he had 4 targets and no catches this last week. They run the ball, they dump it off to Kenneth Walker, or not Kenneth Walker, Gainwell, and Hurts is going to run the ball, and they've got AJ Brown. I don't know. I just don't trust it. I guess I'm going to take the shot on the 2 rookies on Burks and Olave and just hope that they at least get 5 targets apiece and can catch 3 balls apiece.
It'll be really weird after seeing what Devonta did last year, which I feel like was, at least somewhat productive, and there was hope there that he could be, take another step, that he just gets like phased out of this offense. Like, it would be so weird if he did, but I could see it because there's only so many throws from Hurts, I think, to go around.
Yeah. So this week,
I think he probably gets like 6 targets instead of 4 in this game, and I think that's probably where he stays for most of the year. That still doesn't feel good, but that's probably where he should be at.
This week in particular, I feel like they're going to have to throw the ball a little bit more. The Eagles were stomping all over the Lions that whole game. They had like 40 carries or something in the game, which I know the Eagles want to be a run-heavy team, but I expect them to have to throw more at the very least against the Vikings this week. And AJ Brown's not going to have a 42% target share every week. So I'm not worried about the results from week 1. I am not super high on Devonta Smith, but again, when you go back and compare him to all the other options that Colin has, he's your wide receiver 2, buddy.
Yep.
All right, so if Kittle's in, you're playing him over Njoku, right?
Yep.
Well, yeah.
Okay, cool. Then we're not going to talk about that. Let's move on to the other side.
Yeah, the other side, Andy's got right now he's got Thielen at wide receiver 2, and he's got Chubb, Gibson, Javante in the flex, Metcalf on the bench. And this is kind of where, Andy, we've talked about it. Andy's got all the wide receivers. The question is
5 wide receivers and Colin has 1.
So it looks like is that Andy is doubling down on this Minnesota Eagles game being a higher scoring game. Thielen's a touchdown monster. It kind of makes sense if he thinks that that's what's going to happen. Metcalf on the bench against San Francisco seems like a good bet. They do have a good defense, even when it's not a monsoon. That defense is still absolutely legitimate. So if Lazard plays against Chicago, I think that's probably maybe Smith-Schuster in a high-scoring game against the Chargers. That's the only other option I have over Thielen. Ty, what are your thoughts?
Green Bay left Justin Jefferson open all game, which blows my mind. And I think
It's like they didn't know he was good.
Thielen's gonna get more targets this week. I think Thielen comes down with a touchdown. I'm gonna play Thielen. I would say Lazard would be my second choice if we know he is healthy and is playing, but we don't know that. And if it's questionable at all, I'm not playing him. So, because I think Aaron Rodgers knows, and he was talking him up preseason, that this is my guy. He's quote unquote the veteran there. You got Sammy Watkins and Randall Cobb, but they're all super freaking old. They can't do anything. But like this guy can play. He's gonna be my number one option. I don't know. Do you take that shot against the Bears because Rodgers is gonna hyper target a guy if he finds somebody that can catch the ball? I don't know. But I'd leave Thielen in and bank on 4 to 6 catches and hope one of them ends up in the end zone.
The Eagles did manage to give up 35 points to Detroit. So there's
a lot of that was on the ground, which is why I called the big Dalvin game.
Right, but still, I mean, there's just they're going to move the ball, and Thielen's a touchdown monster. Once you get to the red zone, Thielen's going to be a guy you look at. Jefferson was giving them these massive chunk plays where, they could pretty much just do whatever they wanted to do after that. So I like Thielen. I wouldn't be upset with Juju either against the Chargers. I think that's going to be a high scoring game, and I don't expect. I mean, I know it was high scoring last week, but and Juju didn't get a touchdown, but I can't expect him to just not get touchdowns this year like a Miles Sanders. So those are probably my 2 plays. I'd be okay with either one.
Mahomes had a touchdown throw to 3 tight ends last week. So
right. I mean that can't
explain that to me.
He's just going to, like, whoever they're scheming open is whoever they're going to go to. So Juju will be fine this year, and I think he's a fine play. But I understand Thielen because Thielen could absolutely get 2 touchdowns this game and be massive.
All right, so Andy, where are you landing on that?
Right now, I'm leaning toward Juju. I'm for sure leaving Terry in against Detroit after Detroit just got lit up by AJB. I know Terry McLaurin's not AJB, but I expect him to have a good and fine game against Detroit. So I'm happy with that one. Thielen versus Juju is my struggle right now. I agree with everything you said about Lazard, Ty, but especially coming off missing last week due to an injury, I got to see it for a week before I'm putting him in my starting lineup. So, he's probably going to torch the Bears because Rodgers is going to torch the Bears, and that's got to go to somebody, and it ain't going to go to a rookie. So, if Lazard's healthy, then he's probably that guy, but I'm not going to bank on that in week 2 after he's coming off an injury and the Packers were shit last week.
Right.
To be fair, we don't know what Chicago's defense actually is. Like, they could be solid on a consistent basis without a monsoon. So, like, that's just a lot of variance that I don't know if I would want to start on the team.
Yeah.
All right. So who's going to win this match? I'm taking Andy.
I'm also taking me.
I'm taking Andy.
All right.
Thanks,
let's move on to the last game of the week. Andy, you want to take this one? Paul versus Robbie?
Sure. All right. So I guess the main question is, will Robbie's defense score a quarter of his points and keep him alive in this game or not? But looking at roster decisions. Paul's got Jeff Wilson Jr. in at running back since Mitchell's down. And I think we're all probably happy with that. Montgomery at the flex, Debo and Kupp, you're not moving. So I guess it would really come down to if you're wanting to get Wilson or Montgomery out and put in Claypool against New England. I don't think any of us is arguing for that, right?
No.
Not with Paul's team. I would leave the running backs in.
Yeah. All right. Then on Robbie's side, Robinson, Mooney, not great. Najee, I'm going to assume at this point that he's going to play because he says he's going to play. But Najee, Barkley, Fournette, you're not changing that. So, do you want to get Landry or Sammy Watkins in at wide receiver over Mooney? I'm probably leaving it. But it was nice to see Landry get 9 targets, 7 catches, and 114 yards in week 1. But Tampa's defense is a lot different than the Falcons' defense. So I'm probably sticking with Mooney on Robbie's side. What do you guys think there for wide receiver 2?
I think you have to stick with Mooney and give it another week and hope that this 3-target, 1 reception thing isn't going to be a thing. I mean, Fields, they have to scheme Mooney open more because the pass game looked ugly. Fields throws the ball across the field to a wide open Dante Pettis after scrambling around for 10 seconds.
If it works, it works.
I mean, I guess, but Mooney's not going to be the guy that somebody leaves open. So, I mean, I don't know. I want to see Fields and Mooney play again this week in a decent game. I think they might have limited Michael Thomas a little bit more too, which opened up Landry more. They might still be working Olave in a little bit. So I think Landry's actually going to be the one that gets faded out a little bit along the way. So I don't know that I'm doing that. And I'm not playing Watkins. He didn't have a big week 1. He's not going to have a big week 2.
The fact that he's still healthy is a shocker almost.
So, I mean, you got to play Mooney.
Yeah.
I don't like Robinson either, but they got Atlanta, so
it's a lot different than the Bills.
And I said Stafford's going to throw 4 touchdowns this week. He's come in and go off because he has to, and if they don't all go to Cup, they got to go somewhere.
Right. Or are you doing anything different at the wide receiver 2? You sticking with Mooney?
No, but I will say is that I'm actually more concerned about Allen Robinson. Mostly because there's questions right now about his commitment, which is an issue that he had last year with the Bears as well. And if he's not committing to a team like the Rams, throughout the game, there's some post-game analysis of what he was doing. And there was a lot of question marks as far as where his effort was. I think Mooney's going to be fine this year. It was a weird game last week. Fields held on to the ball, barely threw it all in the first half. Things finally opened up a little bit, but I mean, it was a weird game last week. Mooney will be fine. I'm worried about Allen Robinson because I think this is his last chance. And if he doesn't do it with the Rams, he doesn't do it at all. Granted, you have to play him against the Falcons. If there was different matchups here where Robinson had a tougher matchup, I would take Robinson out over Mooney playing against Green Bay. But you got to keep him in for Atlanta and see what happens and hope that this is the week that something clicks with him and Stafford. Maybe they start having breakfast together or brunch or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm less concerned about that. I saw the clips of Stafford saying Robinson didn't go up to try to get that end zone target, and maybe this is just reinforcing the point, and I'm looking at it the wrong way, but the dude had 1 target all game, and you want to bitch about him not putting in maximum effort for an end zone target where he was well covered at the end of a game when that touchdown wouldn't have made a difference. Like, get the fuck out of here. Like, if you want to get the guy the ball, get the guy the ball. You're not throwing it to him next week because he didn't go get a touchdown that didn't matter when he was covered.
I'm saying it's a consistent issue. Last year, I mean, with the Bears, we know the problems there with Nagy and the team was no good and stuff like that. But
sure,
if that's a consistent issue now with Allen Robinson, where he's just there for a paycheck and maybe hoping to coast into a championship or something, that could be a problem for the rest of the year as a wide receiver 1 on Robbie's team. And we consistently see him hitting 3 or 4 points and have a really bad floor. So I think Mooney will be better than that.
All right, so who's going to win?
Paul.
All right, my only concern about Paul's team is Jeff Wilson Jr. If for some reason he gets supplanted, because that's what Shanahan does, Paul could be in trouble. But if Jeff Wilson is starting like he should be, Paul's going to win this one.
Jeff Wilson will get the first 2 carries, and then some random undrafted rookie will get the next 25.
The problem is you might be right, because there was a undrafted or late round rookie that's been talked up in the preseason that they're saying is good.
I think I've got him in my dynasty league, in our dynasty league or something. I don't remember.
No, you have Tyrion Davis-Price. We're not talking about him. All right, but anyway, Paul's going to win this one, and we'll go from there. We sucked at these picks last week, so let's see if we're any better this week. I feel like we were all on the same page more or less this week, so I don't know if that's
we only had 2 matchups that we had dissenting opinions. I picked the duo to beat Fryer, and you 2 went the other way. And Boyer picked Walker to beat Chris, and Ty, you and I thought Chris would win that one. So the other 4 games we were down the line.
Yep. So let's see if this week plays out better for us.
Here's open.
So, all right, you guys got anything else?
Big wiener.
All right. I hate you guys. Your teams suck. I'm going to win this week.
Here's open.
And really, I don't care what you get going on the rest of the week. So we'll see you next week.